Wines from United States. Although many states nurture their own wine industries, California is by far the leading producer of wines, accounting for 90% of the nation's overall grape production. The remaining 10% rounding out the top 5 are Washington and the New York, 30,000 acres each, Oregon 14,000 acres, and the New Jersey less than 1,000 acres. Wine grapes are grown in 46 of California's 58 counties, and in 2004, vineyards covered more than half a million acres. The California Wine County can be divided roughly into 5 geographic regions and other into 12 affiliation of origin, which are divided into 93 smaller American viticultural areas, or the AVA. Dozens of books already have been written about winemaking in California, so the following list can be considered a very rich summary. The American Viticultural Areas is a designated wine grape growing region in the U.S., providing an official appellation for the mutual benefit and wineries of consumers. There are currently 253 American viticultural areas in the 33 states. Over half, the 141 of the American viticultural area are in the California. The Sonoma County alone contains 17 American viticultural areas. North Coast. The prestigious Napa Valley is located here, where an acre of vineyard land can sell for as much as $350,000. Located north of San Francisco, Napa doesn't produce large quantities of wine, only about 3% of California's total, but most is top quality. It contains a dozen sub-appellations with diverse climates. Sonoma County is twice as large as Napa Valley. The North Coast American viticultural areas are strongly identified with cultivations of certain grapes. Russian River with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, Alexander Valley with Cabernet and the single vineyard Chardonnays. The Dry Creek area with Zinfandel, Mendocino and Lake counties are the farthest north affiliation of the North Coast, with plentiful of Chardonnay, Riesling, Gewürztraminer, and the Pinot Noir plantings. Central Coast. This enormous region is its own American viticultural areas. It lies between San Francisco and Santa Barbara and produces about 15% of the state's wine grapes. Monterey, home of the famous Monterey Wine Festival, is here, as is the Paso Robles America viticultural areas. Investors in the Monterey area risked millions of dollars in early attempts to complete the Napa and Sonoma before settling on the wine grapes that grow in the region. Chardonnay, Gewürztraminer, and Riesling, more than 40% of the vineyards are Chardonnay. Today, this region is home to more than 353 wineries. The counties of San Luis Obispo and the Santa Barbara is included in the southernmost portion of the area, where the first California winemakers planted wines in the early 1800s. Central Valley. This inland area stretches 450 miles in length, with the Sacramento Valley to the north and the San Joaquin Valley to the south. Its 18 counties supply about one-fourth of the United States food supply. The San Joaquin Valley produces 70% of all California wines, with table grapes for inexpensive wines. Located between two mountain ranges, the Central Valley-related isolation spared that area from the early ravage of phylloxera, so today it contains some of the oldest wines in the state. The towns of Modesto and Fresno are located in the Central Valley. Winemakers around the town of Lodi are raising the bar by creating some premium wines. Sierra Foothills. About 100 wineries are producing in the area between Sacramento to the west and Lake Tahoe to the east, in Amador. Calaveras and El Dorado counties, most wineries are smaller, family-owned properties. The elevation of 1,500 to 3,000 feet above the sea level, the soil is granite and/or volcanic material, and typically the vineyards are not irrigated. This puts stress on the vines and creates excellent conditions for the big reds, for which this area is known: Cabernet, Syrah, and the Zinfandel. Southern Coast. The area between Los Angeles and San Diego includes 5 AVAs that cover 260,500 acres in Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and San Diego counties. The region contains fewer than 50 wineries and is known primarily for a mix of offbeat varietals such as Cabernet Franc, Cinsault, Primitivo, Montefalciano, and Sangiovese. The largest grape-growing areas are Temecula and the Cucamonga Valley. But the turn of the new century saw a major setback to the wine industry were with an infestation of fierce diseases. A bacterium called the Klebsiella fastidiosa that chokes vines by preventing them from absorbing water and soil nutrients. Today, the southern coast wine industry is recovering from its infestation. Before moving on, a final word about Pierce disease. The bacterium is spread by a large leaf-eating insect known as the glassy-winged sharpshooter or the GWSS, Latin name Homolodasca coagulata. It has been a serious enough threat that the California Department of Agriculture has improved tiny wasps that seek out the sharpshooter's eggs and prevent them from hatching. In 2004, 14 California counties reported outbreaks of the fierce disease. It has not had an impact on humans or pets, but it is fatal to the grapevines and dozens of other plants, including citrus crops. New York produced more than 142,000 tons of grapes in 2004. Of the five AVAs, the largest in terms of size, and the output is the Lake Erie region of western New York. However, as the home of the National Grape Cooperative, better known as Welch, most of the Lake Erie grapes are used for making grape juice instead of wines. The largest wine-producing region is Finger Lakes, which accounts for one-third of the grape growing, about 85% of the wine bottled in the New York State. Classic white grapes varieties do well here, such as Chardonnay, Riesling, and Gewürztraminer. There are about 215 wineries statewide. New York's role as a wine industry powerhouse is partly due to its influence as the distribution center. About 10% of all licensed importers ship their wines to the New York City on their way to other U.S. Destinations, and almost every food and wine publications has an office here too. Wines from Argentina. Argentina has long been known for its value-priced red wine products, but when it comes to the successful exportation of wine, Chile started before Argentina. Argentine winemakers mobilized when they saw how well other South Americans were doing, and in recent years have even replanted about one-third of their existing vineyards in their bid to craft the market better quality varietals. The country has an ambitious strategic plan for its wine industry, aiming for a 10% international market share by the year 2020. It is currently 2%. Interestingly, Argentina's top customers are in order: Paraguay, the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, and Brazil. In 2004, American imports of Argentine wines increased by almost one-third. Argentina has a couple of advantages. First, the land prices are low, which has already started to spur foreign investments in its vineyards. The country also has two unique grape varietals. Malbec is the primary grapes in tough quality reds, and Torontes produce a sweet aromatic white wine. Chardonnay, Cabernet, and Tempranillo are also grown. The best-known grape-growing area of Argentina is Mendoza, which borders Chile. Vineyards are planted straight up mountainsides thousands of feet above the sea level. Wines from Australia. Let's take a quick spin around the globe and find out more about the top 10 countries, world politics, and individual preferences aside. We've arranged them in descending order based on their volume of production. At the end, we've added a section to mention a few other nations' wine. In this chapter, it will mention how each country produce and name their wines based on the type of grapes that they use, and based on the production, based on how they produce, grown, ferment, age, and bottle their wine in different region in France. Wines from France. France has an interesting dilemma. Despite being the world's most prolific wine producer, its own people are drinking less. Wine consumption has decreased slowly but steadily in France to almost half of what it was in 1980. That said, the French still drink much more wine per year, 56 liters per person, than Americans, 12 liters per person. Citing 2003 estimates based on US Census figures and Wine Institute data. Australia seems to have sprung up somewhat suddenly as a winemaking giant, with shelf after shelf of bargain-priced products in U.S. supermarkets. About one-third of Aussie's imports come to the United States. Australia also sells more wine to the United Kingdom than any other nation. For the most part, this is the work of the South Corp, a single conglomerate that owns at least six of the largest and best-known Australian wineries, including Lindmans, Penfolds, and Rosemount Estates. The flood of Australian wines into the United States is expected to continue, especially since export tariffs are being eliminated over an 11-year period that began in 2005. The seven major wine producing regions in Australia are further divided into sub-regions for a total of 50 areas where wine is made, all except one of the major regions, Margaret River in southwest Australia, are located in the southeastern portion of the country. Harvest time here is opposite of that of the United States from February to April. For an Australian wine to be labeled a particular varietal area or vintage year, it must contain at least 85% of the grape type from the specific area of the year. If the wine is a blend, the names of each grape used must be listed on the label in descending order based on volume. Australia's Label Integrity Program (LIP) does not permit the use of generic labels. The oldest winemaking region in Australia is the Hunter Valley, where commercial production began in the early 1800s. It is known for excellent Chardonnays, Semillon, and Shiraz. An unusual name seen on some Australian labels, Coonawarra, probably deserves an explanation. Only 1 mile wide and 9 miles long, it is among the nation's smallest wine-producing regions. Known for its fruity orchard in the past, Coonawarra's vineyards are planted in a deep layer of dark red clay that the locals call terra rosa, which stresses the grapevines and resulting in the production of low-yield but highly concentrated fruit, both red and white grapes. The region is getting a reputation as the Voodoo of Australia. And there is an ongoing effort to restrict the use of the Coonawarra name to only those wines produced from grapevines planted in the famous red soil. Known for its fruity orchards in the past, Coonawarras, okay. Wines from South Africa. In the past, some people would not stock or purchase African wines no matter how good because of the repressive political claims of the apparative. A United Nations embargo on all commerce was lifted in the 1994, and since then the nation is slowly emerging from the stigma and its wine are once again gaining popularity. South Africa's biggest wine customer are United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Germany. The United States received less than 3% of South African wine exports, but that is twice as much as in the past years. Under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, the AGOA, the incoming wines pay no duty, which helps keep prices low for consumers. Instead of small individual wineries, most of the grapes are grown by large cooperatives. Red wines from South Africa includes Cabernet, Zara or Shiraz, and Pinotage, the latter from a grape that is native to the area. It was created in the 1920s by the university professor who crossed Pinot Noir with another red grape, Cinsault, which thrives in hot weather and is known for its spicy characteristics. Wines that are labeled Cape Blends have been have penotage as an integral component. South African white wines made from Chenin Blanc may be labeled Steen, which is what the grape is called there. The country is also known for its dessert wines. Prime winemaking regions include Stellenbosch, known as the Napa Valley of the Cape, and the Paarl, the largest wine district, which is known for distinctive sherries and fort-style wines. Wines from Germany. About two-thirds of the grapes grown in Germany for winemaking are white because they flourish in the cool climate. Although recent years have seen an increase in plantings of red grapes, whites such as Riesling and Sylvaner form the backbone of the Germany's production, along with Muller Thurgau, a hybrid of the two that the Germans developed to suit their climate. But all of the great wines derive from the noble Riesling. The prototype German wine for many years have a fruity but acidic white, light in the body and low alcohol, about 9 to 10%, which combine a pleasant sweetness with a naturally high level of crispiness. Today, there is a movement in Germany towards dry and somewhat dry wines. On the label, trocken means dry, halbtrocken means off dry. These have been slowly to make headway in the US market, where we still expect German wines to be at least slightly sweet. However, the United States is still Germany's second largest export market. This is one of the area of the world in which climate and geography can combine to affect wines greatly, both in quantity and quality. Germany's range extends from ordinary and expensive wines to some of the greatest white wines in the world. There are three basic categories in the country's rigorous system of quality classification and control, namely Tapay wine, table wine, the most ordinary wine. Sugar is added to these wines for fermentation to make up for an inadequate ripeness of the grapes. It is seldom exported. Qualitas wine, the QBA, translated as quality wine from a designated region. This may mean a single vineyard, a group of vineyards, or a group of villagers. These wines also have had sugar added for fermentation. And lastly, the Qualitas Wine Mit Predicat, QMP, translated as quality wine with special attributes. The major attribute is the ripeness of the grapes. In addition, there are five subcategories called predicats being hotly debated among German winemakers who correctly asserted the ripeness of a grape at the time they are picked is not automatic indication of quality. That what the winemaker does with the grapes ultimately determines the quality of the grapes, of the wine, rather. The top German winemakers are fermenting drier, more elegant wines, and if they disagree with the predicate system, refusing to include it on their labels, the five predicates are listed in ascending orders according to the natural sugar level of the grapes at harvest. Cabinet, this light, fruity wine is made from grapes ripened in the ordinary manner but sweet enough to ferment without adding sugar. Splatsis, this wine is made from fully ripened grapes, late picked after the official harvest date. Oslis, this wine is made from particular ripe grapes picked selectively in bunches that any time during the harvest. Oslis wine can be very sweet, dessert style for only somewhat sweet. Verenoslis, this rich, tough quality wine is made from perfectly ripened grapes chosen one by one. Trockenbeerenoslis, this wine is the German equivalent of French Sauternes, made from individually selected overripe grapes that have shriveled with the noble rot that, as you have learned, the Germans called Edelfohl. The term trocken dry refers to the fact that the grapes have dried, not that the wine is dry. A special category of wine is a S-wine, a very rare and expensive wine made from grapes that have actually been allowed to freeze on the vine, concentrating their sweetness and richness. There are 11 wine regions in Germany, all of them surrounding rivers that moderate the climate. Several regions are named for the Rhine River: Rheingau, Rheinhessen, and Rheinfallpfalz. The most famous is the Rheingau, Germany's smallest region, which abounds with tough vineyards. Its wines are riper and fuller than Mosel's, yet steely and firm. Among the famous vineyards here are Skrolios, Johannisberger, and the Skjolos Volrads. Together, the wines from the Rhine and Moselle Valley account for most U.S. imports of German wines. You can tell them apart by a glance by the color of the bottle, brown for Rhine and green for Moselle. Both bottles have a typical tall, tapered shape like a stretched-out burgundy bottle, that have seen in the figure 6.8. A green box bottle figure and also figure 6.8 is used for wines from the Franken region. Wines from Portugal. Portugal is famous for great fortified wines, and U.S. consumers are turning on to Fort as the sophisticated after dinner treat. Portugal exports more wine than either South Africa or Argentina, and as much wine as Germany. The port makers called port houses harvest grapes annually but declare their products vintage port only in years that they consider the best for long-term aging of the wine. The finest quality vintage ports are stored in oak for up to 2 years, then bottled and aged for a decade or more before being sold. The year 2000 was declared a vintage port year. Another option for a top quality wine is single Quanta port. The designation Quanta is a wine level means vineyard, the same as chateau or domain in France. In non-vintage years, bottling fruit from a single vineyard makes it a bit more exclusive, so single Quanta ports can be excellent buys, both in quality and value. For years, the only non-port wines to cross the ocean for sale in the United States were few brand names rosés, pleasant but undistinguished. More recently, this has changed, and you will find some great values for by the glass pouring. You may see Toriga Nacional on Portuguese wine labels, which is the name of a red grape native to the country. The table wines from Minho region, labeled Vinho Verde, whether they are red or white, and are particular bargains. The name literally means green wine, but it refers to the fact that these wines should be enjoyed young and are not meant to be aged. Portugal has its own appellation system called Endecacao da Provincia Regulamentada, which means indication of regulated provenance, with four classifications that apply to all wines except port. Vinho de Mesa, ordinary or table wines. Vinho Regional, at least 85% of the grapes used to make these wines are of the same varietals and harvested in the same year from the same region. Vinho de Qualidade, Produci en Região Determinada, an intermediate classification indicating a fine wine that is just beneath the top level. Domino Cacao de Origem Controlada, the top classification for Portuguese wine indicated by a printed seal across bottle neck, much like strip stamp. Portugal wines classifies its winemaking regions much like the rest of Europe. The top wine-producing regions are the Douro, named for the Douro River, which is in the neighboring Spain is called the Douro, and Dow of central Portugal known for its reds. And the Minho, the largest regions known for its white wines. The newest wine region called the Setúbal and Terras de Sado has led the way in the modernization of the wine industry. More than 30 varietals are grown there. Wines from Chile. Rounding out the top 10 list of wine-producing countries in Chile is Chile, which exports 60% of the wine it makes, even though the Chilean government does not cover any of the marketing or exporting fees. For the most part of Chile's grows the same varietals as the United States, including Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. Chile also has a beautiful blending grapes, Carmenere, a rare varietal that has probably transplanted from Bordeaux. Some excellent and extremely low-priced varietals are Chilean. The wineries have been busy in the last decade ripping out unproductive vines and planting new, more marketable grape varieties. So much so that now the worry is when these new eras come into production, there will be enough processing or storage facility to handle the volume. Foreign investors have taken notice and are making deals. Concha y Toro, Concha y Toro, one of the largest and best-known Chilean wine corporations, teamed up with the France's most Bordeaux producer Mouton Rothschild under the label Almaviva. Wines from other countries. You may have to look a little harder to find them, but wines from other countries make it into the ethnic wine list or the shelves of the savvy wine merchants. New Zealand, with a climate considerably cooler than that of its neighbor Australia, has released some crisp Sauvignon Blancs to the world acclaim in recent years. Its Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are also worth trying. At least four Canadian provinces have wineries. Canada's best-known viticultural region is British Columbia, which has many of the same attributes as its Pacific Northwest neighbors. These are just two examples. In the past few years, in the EU has added six wine growing and nation of its roster of member states and Czech Republic, Cyprus, Hungary, Malta, Slovenia, and Slovakia. Changes are that you have never tasted a Slovakian wine, but you might have seen a heartily Egri Bekaver or Bull's Blood, a first-rate bargain-price Hungarian red wine that occasionally makes it to the supermarket shelves. If you're curious about these wines, first-hand knowledge is also close as the bottle and your corkscrew. In the following chapter, you will continue your quest for winemaking knowledge by learning to create a profitable wine list and by the glass program, and to correctly serve wine to your guests for their enjoyment. A quick world wine tour. Like the rest of the business world, the wine industry has gone global with so much import and export trade between nations that anyone, anywhere can cultivate an international palate. The five wine-making powerhouses of the European Union are responsible for the two-thirds of the wine imported in the world. The United States has managed to command only 6% of the import market, and a variety of other, smaller producing countries share the remaining 27%. Listed by volumes of wine produced, the world's top 10 wine countries are as follows: France, Italy, Spain, United States, Argentina, Australia, South Africa, Germany, Portugal, and Chile. Most of the non-European or so-called New World's competition is from Australia, where grape production is soaring and the government aggressively promotes wine exportations by helping wineries with overseas advertisement and shipping costs. No matter who consumes fine French wines, they lead the world in prestige, and no wine list in any upscale restaurant or fashionable hotels would be complete without these choices. Patrons who knows wines may expect to see several well-known French wines at very high prices on the list, even if they do not order any of them, along with several wines at lower prices that they would be glad to buy. In every five-star hotel and restaurants and even in bar, you will see a list of fine French wines that are very expensive, but it is worth the money. And according to my study, most of the wine lovers prefer French wine because they have a very distinct flavor. The label on the bottle will carry the name of the well-known vineyard or commune, a district or shipper, a vintage date, and the praise appellation controllee, indicating that all of the government requirements have been met. Rarely will a French wine be identified by the name of the grape. However, as you will see, the same outstanding wine grapes are used all over the world to produce quality wines. In France, the major wine-producing regions are Bordeaux, Burgundy, the Rhone Valley, the Loire Valley, Champagne, and the Alsace. The wines of the Bordeaux region have been famous since Roman times. Bordeaux wine comes in a high-shouldered bottle, and the wine bottle that is used differ from where it is produced in every region. A wine spoken as a Bordeaux means a red wine from Bordeaux. It is also referred to by the British term claret. Bordeaux produces a range of wines from connoisseur dreams to everyday table wines, from more than 50 distinct regions within the Bordeaux area. Nearly all red Bordeaux is made by blending grapes, mainly Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. The style of the wine depends on the blend, which varies from one producer to another. There are two distinct production areas, divided by the Gironde River on one side and the Medoc and Grapes district. Cabernet is the main grape. On the other side of the river in Pomerol and Saint-Emilion and numerous satellite zones, Merlot and Cabernet Franc tend to dominate the grape blend. Most prestigious are the Bordeaux wines named for the chateau or vineyard that produces them. The best wines from each vintage is usually bottled at the vineyard and carries the phrase Maison Bouteille or Chateau, literally placed in the bottle at the vineyard, or the phrase Mise du Chateau. The rest of the vintage may be sold to a shipper or a negotiant who blends wine from the various vineyards to sell under the shipper's label or under a monopole, which is registered brand name. At the top of the Bordeaux quality pyramid are the classified growths Chateau wines that were recognized as the leaders as long ago as 1855. When Napoleon III ordered an official classification of French wine, such Chateau wines as Lafite Rothschild, Latour, Margaux, Mouton Rothschild, and Haut Brion are known as the first growth and are the most prestigious. There are 65 classified growths in the Medoc and Grapes, ranging from first growth to fifth growths. In the Saint-Emilion, 74 chateaux are classified as Premier Grand Cru classes or Grand Cru classes, but they are little known because of most are too small to produce much. There are also plenty of Bordeaux Reds. It's either generic or monofole, blended from wines produced anywhere in the large Bordeaux zone or from vineyards in a specific commune, such as Saint Julien and Saint Estèphe. Some of these wines are outstanding. While throughout most of the Europe, wines are identified only by the regional names, not by the names of the grape variety used in them, and these wines are known as the generic wines. A monopole is an area controlled by a single winery and can be as small as a named vineyard or as large as an entire affiliation origin controllee. In addition to the reds, for which it is famous, Bordeaux produces white wines from a Semillon or Sauvignon grapes. Known from the grapes district are fresh, dry, full-bodied, and fruity. Those from the Sauternes district to the south, although made from the same grapes as the grapes wines, are very different. They are ordinarily sweet and rich. These qualities come from the warm climate and especially from the harvesting method. The grapes are left on the vines until they are overripe and develop Botrytis cinerea, a special mold known as noble rot or the pourriture noble in French, Edelfeul in German. This mold dries the grapes, concentrating their sugar and flavor. Each bunch is individually selected at its peak of desirability. A vineyard may be handpicked in this way as many as 8 times. The wines from Sauternes are served at the end of the meal, either with dessert or as a dessert. Of the Sauternes wines, Chateau d'Yquem is the ultimate in terms of fame and fortune. Burgundy wines are also belong on the fine wine list. The French wine referred to as Burgundy are the classical reds made from the Pinot Noir grape in the Côte d'Or region. Like the Bordeaux, they are wines of great character and long life. Shift in a Burgundy bottle shown in figure 6.8. Burgundy vineyards are also classified for quality. The magic phrase here is Grand Cru, which means great growth. Of the Grand Cru vineyards, the most famous are the Roman Conti, Clos de Vogut, and Chambertin, followed by certain hyphenated Chambertins from villages where hyphenated names. Knowing what sort of wine lies beneath the label of the Burgundy wine is far more complicated business than it is for a Burgundy wine. In Bordeaux, in Bordeaux, each vineyard or chateau is owned by a single family or corporation. But in Burgundy, a single vineyard might be owned by many individuals, each with a few acres or perhaps just a few rows of vines. Each vineyard is an affiliation controllee, and each owner or grower is therefore entitled to make an individual wines with the name of the vineyard on the label. As such, there might be great variation in quality depending on the skill of the grower, and conceivably as many as 5 to 50 different wines of the same name and vintage could come from a single vineyard. Similarity, the phrase "mise en voûte au domaine," which names bottled at the vineyard, does not guarantee quality of consistency. This is because there is no uniformity among growers' products even when they bottled at the vineyard. For this reason, it has become the practice of the Burgundy shippers to buy wines from several growers in a vineyard and make a wine carrying the vineyard label on which they stake their own reputation. What a shipper's wine efforts is consistency, but often at the expense of an individual vineyard character. Many shippers make wines that tend to taste almost like each other in the shipper's house style, regardless of the commune from which the grapes come. As a result, shippers play a valuable role in providing readily available, fairly predictable, decent wine, j- just not the very best. The best Burgundies came from individual growers and are made in minuscule quantities, and knowing one's way around among them is one of the most challenging tasks that any wines expert can face. The district of Vaugeois is also part of the Burgundy region, but it produces a very different wines from classical Burgundy. The wine called Beaujolais, made from the Gamay grapes, is fresh, light red, with a short lifespan of 2 to 3 years. It too is shipped in the Burgundy shaped bottle shown in figure 6.8. Unlike most red wines, it is often to serve at a cool cellar temperature. The Vest Beaujolais is identified on its label as Cru Beaujolais, along with the appellation of the commune it comes from. Next is the rank and the appellation Beaujolais villages. The arrival of Nouveau or Nouveau-Beaujolais in the United States on the third Thursday of every November is one of the wine's charming celebratory traditions. The young wine, barely 2 months old, is the first time of wine of the new harvest. It is meant to be uncorked and consumed immediately. Although chilled, it is grapey, refreshing, and fun. It has a very short lifespan of only about 4 months. Although Burgundy is probably best known for its red wines, the white wines made from the Chardonnay grapes can be magnificent. They are among the best white wines in the world. One of the reasons Chardonnay has become so desirable all over the world is the success of the Burgundian prototype. The terms white Burgundy encompasses several rather different wines, even though all are made in Chardonnay grapes. The vineyard of Montrachet and its neighbors are one group. Macon wines are another, and Chablis wines. Montrachet is a small vineyard that produces a white of great prestige and excellence. The vineyard is so famous that its neighbor had hyphenated its name to theirs. Other well-known white Burgundies from these regions are Meursault and Corton Charlemagne. It is said that Charlemagne himself planted this latter vineyard. As with the red Burgundies, There are many small growers in these vineyards and are reliable producers. Shippers rather than estate bottling is often the key to quality. Of the white wines of the Macon region, the best known in the United States is the Folepuese. Other than Macon wines with a district or village affiliations are also imported and are often better values. Chevles is a Burgundy region that produces an entirely different white wines other from the others, although it is made from the same Chardonnay grape. In fact, it is seldom called a white Burgundy. It is simply called Chevles. It is pale, greenish, light and very dry, with a white taste described as fleety. It is most definitely different from the typical sweet American Chevles. There are several classifications: Grand Cru, Premier Cru, and Chevelles, in descending order. Quality varies greatly from one vintage to another because of the weather. This cold northern climate does not often give the grape a chance to ripen fully, resulting in a light, crisp personality in the wine. Red wines from the Côtes d'Uru district in the Rhone Valley have recently become very interesting to Americans, especially that adventurous group who likes to try something new and different. These wines are far from new. The best known Chateau The best-known Châteauneuf-du-Pape vineyard is said to have been planted in the 14th century by Pope Clement V, the first of the French popes who moved the papacy temporarily from Rome to Avignon, hence the name, which means Chateau of the Pope or Vineyard of the Pope. But their wines are different in several ways. They are made from blends of many different, mostly unfamiliar grapes. A single bottle of Chateau d'Eau may contain as many as 13 grape varieties. They are big, deep red, full bodies. Alcoholic wines must be aged many years before they are ready to drink. They have a richness that derives from the grapes ripening in the long, hot growing season of the southern France. Other, other fine Rhone reds such as Heritage and Côte Rôtie are similar in style and pedigree. The district is also the home of Tabel, a fresh, dry, but fruity rose wine. Other group of wines comes from the Loire Valley. The best known are the Folie Fumée, often confused with Folie Fusée, but very different, as well as Sancerre and Vourey. Both Sancerre and Folie Fumée come from the Sauvignon Blanc grapes so popular in the United States today. Although this is also the grape of white Verdot, these Loire wines have a crisper, fruitier style. Vouvray is made in several styles, from bone-dry and fruity to sweet to sparkling. Rose d'Anjou is also from the Loire Valley, one of the most popular roses until the advent of white Zinfandel. It is made primarily from Gamay grapes. It has a charming pink color and a touch of sweetness. The Champagne district of France produces the sparkling white wines that bears its name. All French champagnes are blended of wines from several vineyards and carry the name of the shipper or producer rather than that of a vineyard. They are made from both white and dark grapes unless they are labeled Blanc de Blancs, literally white from whites. A French champagne carries a vintage date only if it is from an exceptionally good year. A champagne level indicated its degree of sweetness. The French term might confuse the novice. They range from brut or nature, the direct, extra sec, extra dry, which means that it contains a small added sugar, sec, dry, which actually indicated slight sweetness, demi-sec, semi-dry, which actually is quite sweet, and dox, very sweet, a seldom made style. These French terms should appear on a wine list entry and servers should be familiar with them. Most of today's champagnes also makes vintage dated champagnes in good years only, and these super premium wines that is tremendously prestigious, not to mention expensive. Dom Perignon and Crystals are two of the best known. The wine regions of Alsace lies across the Rhine of Germany and grows many of the same grape varietals. Because of the district's cool climate, most of the wines are white. Chefs among the grapes are Rieslings, full bodies, fruity, and slightly sweet. And Gewürztraminer, spicy and full flavored. Unlike the wines of the rest of France, most of the Alsatian wines are varietals. Alsace wines are big, firm, flavorful, and dry. They are unlike any other wines in the world, and they have a small but loyal following of fans. Because they are not especially stylish, they are also excellent values. You will find them in the distinctive tall, slender green bottle required by law as shown in figure 6.8. It is similar to the bottle shape for German wines and look more German than French. Wines from Italy. Italy vies with France as the world's largest wine producer, and it exports more wine to the United States than France does. Italian wines come from the native Italian grapes that are not grown anywhere else in the world, and they can be excellent values. Italy also makes plenty of wines from such well-known grapes as Chardonnay and Cabernet, and these wines are often varietally labeled. The style and character of Italian wines vary tremendously from one region to another depending on climate, grape variety, and local custom. Those labeled with the name of grape from which they are produced are called varietal wines. Most premium wines in the United States are marketed as varietal wines. The buyer is assured that the 75% of the wine in the bottle has been made from the variety of grapes identified as Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Sauvignon Blanc and the likes. The French, Italian, and other Western European winemakers have started only recently to label their wines with the name of the grape from which it has been produced. It is really not a mystery why Italian wines are not as popular as the French wines. Their names are not as familiar to US consumers, and there is no specific government program to help winemakers promote their exported products. Add to that the undeniable fact that Italian wine labels can be difficult to read. Knowing three labels designations might be helpful in determining overall quality. First is the Riserva, means reserve, and in Italy legally means that the winery has aged the wine longer than the standard minimums. It sometimes means the wine has a slight greater alcohol content than non-reserved wines of the same type. Classico means the wine directly from a particular wine producing region. If a wine is a Chianti Classico, for example, it comes straight from Chianti, not neighboring area. Classico superiore means both of the above. The wine is from the Classico part of the region and it has a greater alcohol content. Most of Italy's quality wine production is governed by the DOC affiliation system. This system recognizes that and defines more than 200 types of Italian wines from a specific geographical areas. However, unlike France's affiliation system, which actually classifies individual vineyards, DOC does not classify wines by quality. A high level of DOC status is DOCG. The G stands for Garantita, which means guaranteed because every wine must pass an official taste test before being sold. The DOCG system builds in incentives and risks that encourage producers to make quality wines. The DOC classification took effect beginning in the 1973. The DOCG system followed in the 1992 a third-generation indication geographica typica, which means typical geographical indication, was created in the 1996 to account for wines that are typical to the region, not quite prestigious enough to fit in the DOC and DOCG categories. Wines that met IGT standards for 5 years are able to move up the DOC category. Some of Italy's best wine, however, exist outside the DOC frameworks, often because their producers have chosen not to participate in the system. They are technically merely Vinada Tavola tables wine, but their high prices are clues that these are serious wines and not two okay, of the many wine regions in Italy. Three of the particular importance to American restaurateurs: Piedmont and Veneto in the northern Italy, and Tuscany farther south. In the northwest Italy, Piedmont borders on France and produces two of the Italy's greatest reds, Barolo and the Barbaresco. These wines come from the native Nebbiolo grape. They are big, robust reds of great distinction. Barbaresco being somewhat more delicate than Barolo. In this part of Italy, it is common to label wines with individual vineyard names in addition to the name of the wine itself. Piedmont is also home to Asti Sfumante, a delicious sparkling white wine made by the Charmat bulk method from Muscat grapes. It captures the fruity freshness of the grapes and is sweet, making it more appropriate with dessert than other sparkling wines. In the northeastern Italy, Veneto is famous for the trio of wines from Beron, Suave, a white, Bardolino, a light red, and the Valpolicella, a medium-bodied red. They are all made from blends of local native Italian grapes along with its two neighboring regions, Friuli and Trentino. Veneto also makes many varietally labeled Cabernets and Chardonnays. Excuse me. Because of the because of the weather is relatively cool and Italians prepare their wines slightly on the acidic side to accompany food better, these wines will usually be lighter than the counterparts from other parts of the world. Pinot Grigio is a popular white wine from these areas. Tuscany is Italy's other great red wine region. It is the home of Chianti, a DOCG wine that has been improving its quality and image since the mid-1970s. Chianti is a blend of four grapes, predominantly Sangiovese, a native grape grown throughout central Italy. Once known as a rough young wine in a cute, straw-covered bottle, it is now taken more seriously in the wine community and is aged in the Bordeaux-shaped bottle. Chianti Reserve, for example, is aged at least 3 years. The West Chianti is from the Chianti Classico district, often identified by a black rooster on neck of the bottle. Other DOCG wines from Tuscany is the red Brunello di Montalcino, made from a type of Sangiovese called Brunello. It is considered Italy's most expensive red. Many producers in Tuscany are now making premium quality reds and whites that are not DOC, in the manner mentioned earlier. These wines are often made with Cabernet and Chardonnay, using the most sophisticated winemaking techniques. As a result, they are richer and fuller than a Cabernet and Chardonnay from the northeast and considerably more expensive. You will often find enough information for 2 levels on an imported wine. Of the many wines made in other Italian wine districts, Orvieto, Berdisip, and Frascati, all made from native grape varieties, are popular in the United States. All three are light, crisp white. There are also good white varietals made from Bervesio, Pinot Blanc, and Pinot Grigio grapes, a varietal of a different sort of Lambrusco, which is easy to drink and reminiscent of sparkling grape juice. Spain has its own wine affiliation system, with more than 50 Dominación de Origen